It's great to have you on today, Nikita. Just some quick context on you for some of our listeners. Nikita is the co-founder and president of Juniper, which provides custom merchandising solutions for the world's largest online creators. Nikita started Juniper in 2016 and bootstrapped the company to over 150 million in revenue, which is exceptional. But before Nikita founded Juniper, he was a Queen's student studying engineering. And before that, you were also trained to become a professional ballet dancer and have also founded other companies. So can't wait to hear more about your story today, Nikita.
Thanks for having me, James.
Perfect. So why don't we start with diving into what Juniper is? Could you just tell us what you guys do there?
Totally, yeah. So Juniper is a market-leading e-commerce platform for influencers. Influencers typically on YouTube come to us and either through a self-serve option or for our more enterprise-sized clients through, our help, develop e-commerce brands, and they sell products, physical products to their audience bases that we ship to worldwide. So we're basically allowing a lot of these influencers launch their own merch companies in a way.
I imagine you've met some pretty cool people through that.
A whole range of people, yeah. Some of the biggest, most famous people in the world, and trust me, there's a lot of ego there. But yeah, some very interesting people for sure.
Awesome. Nikita, why don't you tell us a little bit about what was going on with you at my age? So I want to know what was going through your head in your fourth final year of Queens. What do you remember thinking about in terms of what was next? Did you want to pursue entrepreneurship? Was that something you knew at the end of fourth year, or were you thinking of maybe starting a corporate career?
Yeah, so I remember. Yeah, I felt pretty lost to be honest in I would say till third, fourth year. I think at some point I figured, hey, I I thought I was fairly smart. I could maybe go into consulting or something like that. Especially going from engineering, I'm like, this is a good mixture between engineering and business. But then, yeah, I did this really cool program called Cansbridge, where I lived in China for a summer and worked there, and met a lot of interesting people through this program, and many of whom had actually started their own businesses. And so my whole kind of world view changed to, okay, let me try to start something. So I did start a company out of school. By no means was successful, but was definitely a fantastic first shot at it. And I just knew, you know what, coming out of fourth year, I'm just going to try to build something right away. So it was pretty stupid, actually. I applied to absolutely no positions at all, while everyone else was, busy in August and September applying for jobs after school. And instead was just spending my time building Connectivate at the time and applying to different programs like Next 36, QIC, etc. So yeah, I in a way like actually was very confident that I would build something out of school. But looking back, like it was so naive and so stupid. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I think that actually helped a lot, not knowing what the hell was to come. So I could just kind of throw myself, into the deep end and see what happened.
I guess you never know until you try either. So that's cool that you took the steps to actually put an idea into action.
Totally.
But I want to ask, like, what gave you the conviction to give your ventures a go? Obviously, you were thinking about building something, but what really made you turn an idea into action, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To be honest, I never had trepidations about the things that I built. And trust me, I'm still early in my career, so I haven't built too much yet. But yeah, I never felt like I needed conviction. I think, the feeling I've had for a couple of these things now, is just being overtaken by the idea and overtaken by the fact that this needed to exist. And so after that, it wasn't about like motivating myself or finding conviction to do it. It's just like, well, it must be done in a way. And yeah, I try to look for that now in any other things, even if it's a small project or something. It's like, wow, like this is a net new thing that the world needs, and won't exist unless I do it. So let's go about doing it. And I find that's like allowed me to not overthink about the work involved or the motivation required, whatever. It's just, that in itself draws you forward, basically.
I want to dive a little deeper into Juniper.
Sure.
So I want to really get a story from you about how you kind of got your first client. I want to know like how you convinced them to trust in you to build something, and that first couple clients experience and starting to realize that maybe you had something.
Well, I've a cheat code to this, and that my first client was my brother, actually, which you probably didn't know. But so it was way easier to convince him than maybe somebody else. But yeah, look, like the Juniper started. I was actually working on another business at the time, and I basically had just graduated and figured, okay, I am making no money right now. I gotta find some sort of a side hustle or something so I can pay myself like, I don't know, 40, 50K a year just to survive, right? Um, and my brother at the time was a YouTuber, and he had about 10,000 subscribers or so at the time. But maybe like 100,000 people watching him a month or something. So I figured, hey, if I sold some t-shirts for my brother, and we converted 1% of those customers or something, I can get to my 40, 50K a year, right? And so, I had a call with them, was like, yeah, let's give this a shot, see what happens. And so very easy to get the first client. And even the subsequent few after that ended up being his friends, which was also easy. But very quickly it turned into an extreme challenge, right? We had, of course, our like few key clients in the form of my brother and his friends, but expanding past that, wow, we had to get a sales motion, executed, a marketing motion executed, the whole 9 yards, and that was tough, but much easier with a brother right there.
That's really cool. How did you, so obviously you found a way to get your clients, but then how did you find, I guess, the right people to build this with you? Like how did you find your co-founder? Where did the
Mm.
manufacturing come from? How did you make those connections there? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, totally. Yeah, actually, so I ended up moving to Vancouver about 6 months in to building Juniper, and it was me and another partner working on it, just a friend of mine, basically. But we had these two guys that were also working in the YouTube space as well, but on a totally different product. And they were like, "Hey, like you're sticking around in Kingston a little too long. Why don't you come out to Vancouver?" And we worked side by side, basically in the same industry, but different products. And eventually their business wasn't doing so well. And so we decided to purchase them, purchase meaning for 10 grand, but basically merged the two companies together. And that's how we became a team of four, basically co-founders, which then ended up being two. But yeah, I think we had a lot of shared values, and the main important thing was that we were all young and just hungry to build something. And so I think that made for a great partnership right away. In terms of getting other things off the ground, I mean, it helped a ton that I had lived in China. So I
Yeah.
felt comfortable with China. I had a sense of how the world worked. I also had a friend actually who was living in China at the time. And so, the two of us started working together, and he started figuring out some of the shit on the ground for us. But we ended up going to China, dozens of times over the years just to figure out the manufacturing infrastructure, meet with factories, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, it was fun.
Are there any notable creators you've worked with, or any notable products that were particularly successful or maybe just interesting to you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Whenever people ask me which clients we have that they would know, I struggle to tell them actually, because our our main market is actually sort of young children, right? Like maybe like 6 to 15-year-olds. Like that's the people who I could tell them any one of our YouTubers and they'd be like, "What? Are you fucking serious?" Right? But someone like you maybe not. Yeah, look, like we have many clients that have that do like 1 billion views a month, which is just mind blowing, right? So very famous on that level. I'd say meaningful products, maybe a couple come to mind. So one of our one of the first launches we did, it wasn't our first launch, but actually quick context. So after working with my brother for a year, there was actually another much larger company that approached him, and basically wanted to work with him. And we were such a small little company at the time that we said, all right, Dennis is his name. I don't want our relationship as brothers to get in the way of you doing something that's really impactful for your career. So it's okay. Go work with them. And they were supposed to launch this basically backpack or back to school campaign for him, and they just kept dragging their feet, and it took weeks and months for them to prepare something. And then at some point, it just kind of became clear they weren't going to do it, and or didn't have the capacity to do it. So um, yeah, with about a week before back to school season, we decided, fuck it, let's try to do this ourselves. And we didn't have a product ready, obviously. We weren't able to do any of that. So we just designed, like, we got a designer to design a backpack and just put it up on Shopify and launch the whole thing on pre-order, which we were like, this is insane, but let's just see what happens. And we sold hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of this backpack, and it didn't even exist yet, right? And that actually became our kind of core model moving forward. Was we decided, hey, let's not take any inventory risk. Let's actually just launch all of our products on pre-order, and then sure, maybe add like a month to shipping time for folks, but it ended up working well. So that really stands out. Yeah, we've launched some really cool like board games in the past. If you know the game Apex Legends,
Yeah.
we run their store, so it's been cool to kind of see our clientele list expand outside of just the YouTube world and into games and brands like Teletubbies and fun thing like that.
Nikki, I want to ask you about this like trend towards influencer branding. So I want to kind of ask you about, can someone with a large following sell anything? Like, for example, you see the trend towards creator brands like Logan Paul and KSI with Prime, like two of the biggest influencers in the world who've scaled their drink company pretty well. People like Mr. Beast who own their own brands and then connect a supply chain into the back end. Do you see influencers being the primary face of consumer brands in the future?
Um, Potentially, yeah, that's a challenging question actually. It definitely works, but I would say for the like top 0.1% of the market.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you the number of times we engaged with a creator and they had all the right metrics in place, right? Like they were millions of people watching them, tons of subscribers, great engagement. And then we would launch the store on Shopify and be asking ourselves like, is there a glitch, like is Shopify glitching right now? Why are there no sales coming through? And realizing, shit, okay, this person can't sell. So this is still actually something that plagues the entire industry, is trying to play venture capitalist a little bit and place your bets on which creators to go with. So yeah, I think the world kind of starts to believe that this is the future, given the Logan Pauls and Mr. Beasts of the world. But I think actually those creators are pretty few and far between that can carry these types of brands. And I think those brands are actually better off most of the time owning their own IP, and maybe leveraging a creator to kind of kick it off. But yeah, it's tough. I feel like one out of every 10 shots might make it, but you're kind of in the venture capital world at that point.
Nikita, what would you say was your biggest challenge in getting this off the ground, or maybe just even your biggest challenge you've faced so far in your entrepreneurial journey with any of the companies you've started?
Huh. Um, yeah, it's tough to pick because there's challenges all over the place. Um, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I haven't actually worked on like full time on a company in the past year and a half or so. So it's given me a lot of time to reflect. Um, you know, I started Juniper in my early 20s, and I was basically trying to figure out how to build this company and grow it and lead other people while leading my own life as well, right? And trying to grow myself as a human being throughout that time and grow from being this little 20-year-old kid to I'm 29, still a kid, but um, that was extremely challenging, right? Like often I would be managing people older than me, and still struggling with my own personal struggles in life, right? My own self-doubts, my own inadequacies and such, yet trying to kind of be the ferocious leader that was required at times. So, um, yeah, I think, there's so many challenges I could speak to, but I know that was one that really plagued me was, um, you know, trying to kind of lead myself first before I could lead others, or at least try to balance those two things as time went on.
I want to go back to that self-doubt part because I know as an entrepreneur, it's inevitable that it creeps in at some point. Not even as an entrepreneur, just as a person. How did you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no real good way to deal with it at first, right? You kind of just get slapped in the face constantly on a day-to-day basis with your own self-doubt. I think you just kind of come to realize that it's part of the journey and part of the package, and you kind of relax into it, right? Like you are doing something that should not work, right? No one believes it will work,
Yeah.
certainly to start, right? You don't even necessarily believe it will work either, right? But you're like, okay, I have enough conviction here that something might happen. Um, and but ultimately, right, like it is a bet, and all the decisions you should be making, you can't wait until you have perfect information to make that decision. You have to make it when you got like 20% of the data. Um, and so you're constantly living in this world of like, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen next. But again, once you do that enough, you realize like it's okay. Actually, like the self doubt is just supposed to be here.
Yeah.
I will. It is silly of me to ever think that I will be in a phase where I don't doubt what's going on, right? So as long as I know that, I can just relax into this.
Nikita, before we pressed record, you told me you just spent the last year and a half traveling. I want to hear about this because I know that what you're told, at least as a student, is that once you start your corporate career, it's pretty tough to find those moments to take months at a time off to do things like travel and, do things that you really want to do. So tell me about what you've experienced over the last year and a half doing this travel. Where did you go? Any insight or stories you can share there?
Yeah, no, I feel so grateful and lucky that I've been able to do this. I read a book, The 4 Hour Work Week, when I was about your age, actually, and in that book, Tim Ferriss talks about this concept of mini retirements. So rather than sort of leaving your retirement till your golden years, kind of finding times throughout your life to actually spread it out. And yeah, I'd always, since I was 20, wanted to take like a year or two off and just travel. So it's awesome. I was all over the place. As I was telling you, some highlights were Nepal and India for a few months, which were incredible. I'd been very interested in Buddhism, and I didn't grow up in a religious family, so was sort of seeking frameworks to help understand, you know, my life, universe, death, concepts like that. So found a lot of answers while out there. Met my girlfriend while abroad. She's Spanish. We met actually in Nepal and have traveled the world together this past year, which didn't expect, but here we are, which has been awesome. And yeah, man, I now have the struggle of figuring out how to transition back into the working world from this. And when I first embarked on the travels, I thought, hey, I've got a whole year and a half. That's like forever. Now those 18 months are done, and I'm like, shit, all right, what does this new paradigm look like? But yeah, it was awesome, and at the same time, excited to come back and build again.
That's super cool. I guess, yeah, like uh in my experience, like I've done, I just imagine you did exchange maybe. That's a common thing at Queens. And then a lot of people do the Southeast Asia or you maybe Europe again in between graduating Queens and starting maybe a full-time job. So that's really cool that you got to do this for a year and a half and at the age of 29. That's awesome. I want to kind of dive into some advice you can offer to students, Nikita.
Mhm.
What kind of advice would you give to someone maybe in my position who's in university or about to finish with an interest in entrepreneurship, but maybe not sure? what that looks like or where to start or what's next.
Totally. Yeah. Um, yeah. Again, like you kind of need to relax into the idea that you do not know what you're doing and to be totally okay with that. You actually should not know what the hell you're doing. Um, that is the position you should be in. And I, I've heard from different people over the years exclaim just how impressed they were that I started something out of university. And it's publicly I'm proud of that, but privately I'm like it was actually easy. It was easier to start something right out of university than later, simply because I didn't have any other responsibilities in my life. My life cost nothing. It didn't feel like a risk because I wasn't risking anything, right? Whereas I have friends now, around my age, 30 years old, who started their careers, are making good money now, thinking about starting families soon, and it's a huge risk to now say goodbye to all of that and start a business, and go back to making, no salary. So yeah, I highly encourage folks like you that are interested to just dive in and feel comfortable with the fact that you don't know what's going on, and know that that's actually the fastest way for you to learn, right? I think a lot of people get stuck thinking, I should probably like pick up this course or like work at this job for a couple of years, or learn that and then I'll be ready. And the reality is that you'll never be ready. And if you want to take a crash course in building anything or learning how to build anything, it is just to try. It is just to go straight for it, right? So if you do it, you'll probably feel like an idiot for the first. I mean, probably for the whole for the whole package, but that's okay, and I encourage everyone to do it.
That's great advice. Final question here, Nikita, before we wrap up. Can you give me maybe it's a loaded question, but what's your biggest takeaway from all of this? Just growing a company as a
Mm,
young founder and just biggest learning from everything you've learned up until now, I guess.
biggest learning, damn, yeah. I think, uh, yeah. Look, like I've felt like the highest highs in my life from this journey. I've felt the lowest lows in my life from this journey, and at times, yeah, have like asked myself why, why I jumped in. Um, what's been really nice about it is that it's added a richness to my life that I don't know would exist otherwise. Right? It is the high highs and the low lows and the volatility between those that make you feel this full breadth of what, I think this universe and life can offer you. Um, and so, and of course, it offers other opportunities like traveling for a year and a half off, which has been great. But yeah, I think as I'm thinking about what to do next, you know, the parts of me that remember the terrible times think, why the fuck would I do that again? Why would I build that again? That's so stupid. I'm gonna feel the most embarrassed I've ever felt in my life again, feel like an idiot again, etc. But again, like it's the richness of life that is offered by it that I think pulls me back into it. So yeah, I think that's my takeaway.
That's great, Nikita. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to continue following your journey, and I appreciate all that inspiring advice you offered to me and hopefully other students looking for advice. So thank you so much.
Of course, James. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been awesome.